I still have the camera. Not because I want it. Not because it's valuable. I keep it because every time I've tried to throw it away, it somehow finds its way back into my apartment before sunrise. Once it was sitting on my kitchen table. Once it was on the passenger seat of my truck with the engine still warm. The last time, I buried it in wet concrete at an abandoned construction site nearly 50 miles from home. 3 days later, I opened my mailbox and found it inside. If you ever come across an old instant camera with no brand name, no serial number, and a cracked leather strap that feels colder than everything around it, don't point it at anything you care about, because the picture won't show what is. It'll show what hasn't happened yet. And eventually, the camera expects you to make the picture come true. My name's Evan, and until 8 months ago I would have laughed at a story like this. I worked freelance restoring old electronics for collectors, mostly vintage radios, cassette players, film cameras, anything mechanical that modern repair shops didn't want to touch. It wasn't glamorous, but it paid enough to keep the lights on. Most of my jobs came from estate sales. Families cleaning out homes after someone passed away usually had no idea what they were selling. Half the time I'd buy a box for $20 and find a camera worth several hundred. That's exactly how this started. There was an estate auction outside a tiny mountain town I'd never heard of. The owner had died with no living relatives, so everything inside the house was being sold. The place smelled like old books and damp wood. Most buyers crowded around antique furniture. I wandered into the basement. That's where I found the camera. It was sitting alone on a workbench under a dusty cloth. No case. No manufacturer. Just matte black metal that somehow looked older and newer than every other object in the room. It didn't even have a lens cap. The auction volunteer walked downstairs while I was looking at it. "You buying that thing?" he asked. "I might." He shrugged. "Take it." "Seriously?" Nobody else wanted it. I laughed. "What's wrong with it?" He hesitated just long enough to make me notice. The old owner wrote in his journal that nobody should use it. I smiled. And he stopped taking pictures of people. That was it. He walked back upstairs before I could ask another question. I figured the old man had probably gone senile. I bought the camera for $5. On the drive home, I noticed something strange. There wasn't a single company logo anywhere. No markings. No country of origin. Nothing. Even stranger. There was no way to open the back. It looked like an instant camera, but I couldn't find a compartment for film. I spent 20 minutes trying. Nothing. When I got home, I set it on my workbench and forgot about it until around midnight. That's when I heard it. Click. The sound came from my garage. I grabbed a flashlight. Nothing had fallen over. Nothing looked disturbed. Then, click. The camera was lying exactly where I'd left it, except now a photograph was sticking out of the front. I froze. I knew for a fact there hadn't been one before. I slowly pulled it free. The image was still developing. Gray shadows slowly became recognizable. It was my living room, taken from the hallway. The timestamp printed across the bottom read, 11:43 p.m. I looked at my watch. 11:19. 24 minutes ahead. I frowned. Maybe the internal clock was wrong. Then I noticed something else. In the picture, the television was lying face down on the floor. My coffee mug had shattered beside it. A floor lamp was snapped clean in half. I stared at the image. Everything in my living room was perfectly normal. I actually laughed. Nice trick. I set the picture on the table and walked inside. Nothing was broken. No mystery there. I made coffee, turned on a baseball game, forgot about the whole thing. At exactly 11:43, my neighbor's truck slammed into the side of my house. The impact shook everything. The television crashed off the stand. The lamp toppled. My coffee mug exploded against the hardwood floor. When the noise stopped, my living room looked exactly like the photograph. Exactly. Down to the angle of the broken lamp. I didn't sleep. The police said my neighbor had suffered a heart attack while backing into his driveway. His truck rolled straight through my fence. Just bad luck. I didn't mention the picture. Who would believe me? The next morning I compared every detail. The photo matched reality perfectly. Not almost. Perfectly. I spent the next 2 days trying to explain it. Hidden camera? Impossible. Coincidence? Maybe. Elaborate prank? By who? Eventually, curiosity won. I set the camera on my kitchen counter, pointed it toward the backyard, pressed the shutter. Click. Another photograph slid out. This one developed faster. The timestamp said 3:12 p.m. Current time, 2:51. 21 minutes early. The picture showed my old maple tree split in half. The sky looked dark. There was something lying beneath the branches. It took me a second to recognize it. My golden retriever, Cooper. He wasn't moving. No. I grabbed the picture, looked outside. Sunny skies. No wind. Cooper chased squirrels along the fence like always. I looked back at the photo. He was definitely dead. I refused to believe it. The weather app showed clear skies for the rest of the day. No storms. No strong winds. Nothing. At 3 o'clock I brought Cooper inside. Locked every door. Closed every window. I wasn't taking chances. He curled up beside the couch while I watched the clock. 3:08. Nothing. 3:09. Still fine. 3:10. My phone rang. Unknown number. Normally I would have ignored it. Instead I answered. A woman's voice. Calm. Is this Evan? Yeah? I'm calling from Mountain Ridge Animal Hospital. I think you've got the wrong number. Silence. Then, no. A chill ran through me. We're calling because your dog is on his way here. What? He's already bleeding. My mouth went dry. What are you talking about? The line went dead. At that exact moment, Cooper lifted his head. His ears stood straight up. He wasn't looking at me. He was staring at the back door. Low. Silent. The kind of growl I bought in. Or had only heard once before when a black bear wandered through my yard years earlier. Then he barked. Hard. Once. Twice. 3 times. Before throwing himself at the glass. I rushed over just as something hit the outside of the house with enough force to shake the walls. Not thunder. Not a car. Something heavy. The maple tree groaned. Wood cracked. I looked through the window just in time to see the trunk split down the middle. Half the tree crashed toward the house. The massive branches smashed through the fence. Exactly where Cooper had been playing less than 15 minutes earlier. If I'd left him outside, the photograph would have come true. Instead, the broken tree stopped inches short of the back porch. Cooper was alive. For the first time, the future had changed. I should have felt relieved. Instead, the camera made another sound. Click. It hadn't been touched. A fresh photograph slowly emerged from the front. This one had no timestamp. Only a picture. It showed my front door standing open in the middle of the night. Someone was inside my house. The figure wasn't facing the camera. It was standing in my hallway, perfectly still. Its body looked human. Its shadow didn't. The shadow stretched across the walls like tangled roots climbing toward the ceiling, and written across the white border at the bottom, where the time should have been, were 6 words. You weren't supposed to save him. I don't know how long I stood there staring at those 6 words. The photograph trembled in my hand. Not because the paper was moving, because I was. You weren't supposed to save him. The camera wasn't just predicting the future. It knew I'd changed it. I looked down at Cooper. He was pressed against my leg, growling so low I could barely hear it. His eyes never left the back door. Animals notice things people convince themselves don't exist. I'd always believed that. Now I wasn't so sure I wanted to. I wrapped the camera in an old towel, shoved it into my toolbox, and locked the garage. Then I locked every door in the house. That night I slept with every light on, or at least I tried to sleep. Around 3 in the morning, Cooper started whining. Not barking. Whining. The sound pulled me awake. He was sitting beside the bedroom window, staring into the darkness outside. His tail was tucked so tightly between his legs it disappeared beneath him. I looked through the blinds. Nothing. Just my front yard. The mailbox. The oak tree. The empty street. Then I noticed something that made my stomach tighten. There were footprints in the dew. Bare feet. They started in the middle of my lawn. Not at the sidewalk. Not at the driveway. The first print appeared as if someone had simply stepped into existence. They crossed the grass, stopped beneath my bedroom window, and never left. No return trail, no second direction, just a single set ending directly below me. I called the police. They searched the property, found the prints, couldn't explain them. One officer joked maybe a sleepwalker wandered off barefoot. His partner didn't laugh. He kept staring at the ground. When they left, he quietly asked me something. "Has anyone taken pictures of your house lately?" I frowned. "What?" He shook his head. "Forget it." Then he got into the cruiser and drove away. That should have been the end of it. Instead, the next afternoon, someone knocked on my front door. She looked to be in her early 60s. Gray hair pulled into a tight braid. Denim jacket. Hiking boots covered in dried mud. She wasn't smiling. "You bought something from the Hawthorne estate." It wasn't a question. "Who are you?" "My name is Ruth." She glanced past me into the house. "Is the camera still here?" I didn't answer. She sighed. "It is." I should have shut the door. Instead, something in her voice stopped me. Not fear. Recognition. Like she'd rehearsed this conversation years ago. I let her inside. She refused coffee. Refused to sit. She simply looked around my living room until Cooper walked over. The moment he sniffed her hand, he relaxed. That was enough for me. "You know about the camera." "I know too much about it." She reached into her backpack and pulled out a faded instant photograph. The colors had almost disappeared. It showed a younger version of herself, standing beside a man with curly brown hair. Both were smiling. On the back, she'd written a date, June 18th, 23 years ago. He died 6 hours after this was taken. I looked closer. What happened? He drowned. The picture doesn't show that. It wasn't taken after. She met my eyes. It was taken before. A chill crawled through me. My husband found the camera in 2003. My mouth went dry. It showed him pieces of the future. Exactly. He thought it was amazing. He thought he could save people. She nodded once. At first he could. I leaned forward. "What do you mean?" She took a long breath. "The future isn't fixed." I blinked. "So I really changed it with Cooper?" "Yes. But every change creates a debt." I didn't like that word. Debt? The camera doesn't care whether someone lives or dies. She folded her hands. It only cares that the picture becomes true. I felt cold despite the summer heat. So if someone survives, something else must happen. I wanted to argue. Instead, I remembered the words. "You weren't supposed to save him." Who made it? I don't know. What is it? I don't know. Then what do you know? She finally looked frightened. I know the camera hates unfinished photographs. Before I could ask what that meant, click. The sound came from the garage. Both of us froze. "No," Ruth whispered. She looked genuinely terrified. It found another future. I unlocked the garage. The toolbox sat exactly where I'd left it, still locked, yet the camera was resting on top of it. The towel remained folded inside, untouched. A fresh photograph stuck halfway out. Neither of us reached for it. Finally, Ruth whispered, "You have to." I pulled it free. It developed almost instantly. This one showed me, standing in the local grocery store. A little girl was reaching toward a display of canned soup. Behind her, a ceiling light fixture was falling. The timestamp read, 4:17 p.m. I checked my phone. 3:46. 31 minutes. "We have time," I said. Ruth grabbed my wrist. "No." "What? You don't understand. I can stop this." "Maybe. I have to try." She looked like she wanted to stop me. Instead, she quietly said, "Then whatever you do," she swallowed. "Lines. Don't let anyone photograph you." What? Trust me. It sounded insane, but after everything I'd seen, I nodded. We drove to the grocery store. I spotted the girl immediately, maybe 6 years old, standing with her mother near aisle 7, exactly like the picture. The overhead light was still firmly attached. Nothing looked wrong. I positioned myself beneath it anyway. If it fell, I'd shove them out of the way. Simple. Easy. Minutes crawled by. Nothing happened. The mother grabbed a few cans. The girl wandered exactly where the photograph showed. 4:15. Still nothing. Maybe we'd done it. Maybe changing the future really was possible. Then every light in the building flickered. Customers looked up. Someone laughed nervously. The emergency lights failed to turn on. Darkness swallowed the store for 2 full seconds. When the power returned, everyone gasped. The little girl wasn't beneath the light anymore. She was standing behind me. The fixture wasn't falling toward her. It was falling toward me. I barely had time to dive. The steel housing smashed into the floor where I'd been standing. Glass exploded across the aisle. People screamed. Employees rushed over. The girl was untouched. I looked at the photograph again. It had changed. The image no longer showed the little girl beneath the light. Now, it showed me lying on the floor, exactly where I'd landed. The picture had rewritten itself, as if it had always been that way. Ruth's face turned pale. It's learning. What do you mean? She didn't answer. Instead, she looked toward the end of the aisle. Someone else was standing there, watching us. A man wearing a dark gray raincoat, inside a brightly lit grocery store. His face was hidden beneath the brim of an old baseball cap. Customers walked around him without acknowledging he existed. He wasn't shopping. He wasn't moving. He was looking directly at me. Then, very slowly, he lifted an instant camera, one that looked exactly like mine. The flash exploded. White light filled the aisle. By the time my vision cleared, the man was gone. Only a single photograph remained on the floor where he'd been standing. I picked it up before Ruth could stop me. The image was still developing. It showed my house. Every window was dark. The front door hung open, and standing in the doorway was me, except I was smiling. I never smile like that. My mouth was stretched impossibly wide. Behind my reflection, filling the hallway from floor to ceiling, was the same impossible shadow I'd seen before, except now I could finally make out its shape. It wasn't casting a shadow. It was made of them, hundreds of overlapping human silhouettes, all moving independently inside one towering body. Across the bottom of the photograph, new words slowly bled into the white border. It knows what you look like now. Asterisk. The moment those words appeared, Ruth snatched the photograph out of my hand. Her face lost every bit of color. We're leaving. What is that thing? She folded the picture so tightly it nearly cracked. Not here. She practically dragged me through the parking lot. I kept looking over my shoulder. The man in the raincoat was gone. No security cameras caught him. No employee remembered seeing him. It was as if he'd only existed for the two of us. We drove for nearly an hour without speaking. Finally, Ruth pulled into an abandoned ranger station deep inside the national forest. The building looked condemned. Broken windows. Collapsed porch. No electricity. She unlocked the door with a key she'd apparently carried for years. Inside, the place was surprisingly clean. Shelves lined the walls. Every shelf was filled with photographs. Thousands of them. Some were faded almost completely white. Others looked brand new. None of them were in frames. Every single one had handwritten notes on the back. Dates. Names. Locations. Some simply read, asterisk, occurred. Asterisk. Others said, asterisk, changed. Asterisk. And a disturbing number were marked. Asterisk, never found. I slowly turned in a circle. Who collected all these? My husband. I stared. I thought he drowned. He did. She looked away. I kept collecting after he died. My eyes landed on a bulletin board. Pinned across it were dozens of maps. Each had circles drawn around disappearances, fires, bridge collapses, unexplained accidents, and missing person cases stretching back nearly 40 years. They weren't random. They formed a spiral. Every event pointed toward the same place, the Hawthorne estate, the house where I'd bought the camera. I looked back at Ruth. This has been happening for decades. She nodded. Longer. Then why isn't anyone talking about it? They are. She gave a sad smile. No one believes them. She reached beneath an old desk and lifted out a battered journal. The leather cover was cracked almost in half. This belonged to Arthur Hawthorne. The man who owned the estate? He wasn't the first owner. She handed it to me. Most of the pages were filled with sketches instead of writing. Drawings of impossible shadows, cameras, eyes, doorways. The final pages were different. Neat handwriting. One sentence repeated over and over. Asterisk. The witness always becomes the subject. Again, and again, and again. Every page ended with the same warning. Don't let it finish your portrait. What does that mean? I asked. Ruth didn't answer immediately. Instead, she opened a steel cabinet. Inside were 6 instant cameras. Every one looked different. Different decades. Different styles. But each had one thing in common. None had a brand name. There isn't just one. I felt my stomach tighten. How many are there? We've recovered 6. Recovered? We believe there are more. I stared at the shelf. You mean, they move? Silence settled over the room. Then, click. Not one camera. All of them. Every shutter fired at exactly the same moment. The sound echoed through the building like a gunshot. 6 photographs slowly emerged. No one touched them. One by one, they slid completely out on their own. Every image was identical. The ranger station. Tonight. Only, it was burning. The timestamp read, 8:42 p.m. I checked my watch. 8:11. 31 minutes. We leave, I said. Ruth shook her head. No. What? This place has protected us before. You just said the picture predicts the future. It predicts the future, so we change it. She looked exhausted. Sometimes changing it is exactly what causes it. I hated that answer. Before I could argue, another voice spoke behind us. I was wondering when someone would finally find this place. I spun around. A man stood in the doorway. Late 50s. Clean shave. Brown jacket. Friendly smile. He looked completely ordinary. Too ordinary. The kind of face you'd forget 5 seconds after meeting him. He raised both hands. I'm not here to hurt you. Ruth whispered one word. No. She knew him. He smiled at her. It's been a long time. I looked between them. Who is he? Ruth's voice cracked. My husband. Everything inside me stopped. What? She backed away until she hit the wall. No. The man sighed. I was hoping this would be easier. I looked from him to Ruth. You said he drowned. I did. The man nodded. That's true. I felt like my brain had stopped working. You can't both be telling the truth. We are. He looked directly at me. I drowned 23 years ago. The room fell silent. Then he smiled again. I just didn't stay dead. Before I could move, he reached into his jacket. I expected a weapon. Instead, he pulled out another photograph. It showed Ruth standing exactly where she was now. Only in the picture, she wasn't alone. Someone was behind her. A child, maybe 10 years old, holding her hand. The boy looked familiar. Not because I'd met him, because he looked almost identical to the man standing in front of us. The older version looked at the photo for a long moment. His expression softened. I haven't seen him in years. Ruth began crying. You don't get to say that. I know. You left him. I know. You let him die. I know. His voice exploded through the room. For the first time, his smile disappeared. I tried to save him. Silence. Then he whispered, the camera wanted one life. I gave it mine. It changed its mind. I slowly lowered the photograph. You had a son. Neither of them answered. Finally, Ruth nodded. Daniel, what happened? She couldn't speak. The man answered instead. I saved a bus full of children. He laughed bitterly. I thought I'd beaten it. What did it take? My family. The room suddenly felt colder. The camera collects balance, he continued. Every future you refuse. Why it harvests somewhere else. I remembered Cooper, the little girl, the truck, the tree. Every future I'd changed. Every life I'd saved. What has it taken because of me? Neither of them answered. That silence was worse than anything they could have said. Then the lights flickered. Except, there were no lights. No electricity. The room simply became brighter. A pale white glow seeped through every crack in the walls. The photographs hanging around us began rustling, not from wind, from movement. Every picture was changing. Faces disappeared. Buildings crumbled. People shifted positions. Entire landscapes rewrote themselves. Thousands of futures, updating at once. Then every photograph turned toward the same image. Me, standing alone, holding the black camera. Behind me stretched an endless corridor filled with doors. Each door stood open. Inside every doorway, someone I loved. My parents, my sister, Cooper, friends, neighbors. People I'd met once, all staring at me, waiting. At the very end of the corridor stood the shadow creature. Now I could finally see it clearly. It wasn't made from darkness. It was made from moments. Every silhouette was frozen in the instant before disaster, the last heartbeat before a crash, the final breath before drowning, the second before a fall. It wasn't stealing lives. It was wearing unfinished futures. The creature had no eyes, yet I knew it was looking directly at me. Every photograph in the room developed one final line of text at exactly the same time. It has stopped taking pictures of your future. Asterisk, now. Asterisk, it is waiting for you to take the next one. I wish I could tell you I ran. Every survival instinct I had screamed at me to turn around and sprint until my lungs gave out. Instead, I froze. Not because I believed my mother was somehow standing in those woods, because I knew she wasn't. I buried her 4 years earlier. Her voice came again. Evan. Soft, patient. Exactly the way she'd sounded whenever dinner was ready and I'd stayed outside too long. A lump formed in my throat before my brain caught up. Whatever had spoken knew more than my name. It knew how she said it. Cooper let out a sharp yelp behind me. Not a bark. A cry. When I looked down, every hair along his back stood straight up. His eyes weren't fixed on the darkness ahead anymore. They were locked on something behind me. Very slowly, I turned. Nothing. Just trees. Then, I noticed something impossible. The flashlight beam wasn't reaching one of them. About 30 feet away stood an enormous fir tree, except the light bent around it, like water flowing around a rock. My beam illuminated every trunk except that one. The closer I looked, the more wrong it felt. Its bark wasn't bark. It shifted. Tiny ripples rolled across its surface, like thousands of fingers pressing from beneath dark fabric. I blinked. The movement stopped. You're imagining things, I whispered. The forest answered. No, not my mother's voice this time. Mine. I heard my own voice repeat the words from somewhere behind the strange tree. Wine. You're remembering. My stomach dropped. Cooper suddenly bolted. He didn't run toward home. He charged straight into the woods. Cooper! I took off after him without thinking. Branches whipped across my face. Roots caught my boots. I nearly fell twice. His collar jingled somewhere ahead. Then, silence. The jingling stopped. I reached a small clearing. Cooper sat perfectly still in the center. His tail wasn't wagging. He wasn't growling. He simply stared at the ground. The clearing itself looked organized, not natural. 7 massive stones formed a rough circle around a patch of dark earth. No moss covered them. No leaves rested inside the ring. It looked as though the forest itself refused to touch that place. In the middle stood a single wooden post. Someone had carved hundreds of tiny marks into it. Each mark looked like a tally. Thousands of them. I stepped closer. Every 5th mark had been crossed out, except one. One tally near the bottom remained unfinished, only halfway carved. Fresh wood showed through the cut. Someone hadn't finished counting. My flashlight flickered again. Then something else caught my attention. Footprints. Bare feet. Small ones. They circled the stones over and over until they disappeared into the trees. There were no prints leading into the circle, only around it, as if whoever made them had started walking there. A cold breeze touched the back of my neck, the first wind I'd felt since entering the forest. It carried a whisper. Don't stand inside. I spun around. Nobody. The whisper came again, this time from above. I slowly raised my flashlight. Every branch over the clearing was empty, except one. Something sat perfectly balanced nearly 40 feet above me. At first I thought it was an owl. Then it unfolded. Not wings, legs. Far too many of them. Long, impossibly thin limbs wrapped around the branch like strips of black ribbon. Its body never moved, only its head. It rotated slowly until it faced me. There were no eyes. Its face was perfectly smooth, like polished white wood. Then, one eye opened, not on its face, on its chest. A single amber-colored eye, human-sized. It blinked once. Cooper began barking wildly. The creature didn't react. Instead, every tree around the clearing creaked at exactly the same time. I backed away. The eye closed. The creature folded itself against the branch again until it looked almost identical to part of the tree. If I hadn't watched it move, I'd never have noticed it. Something grabbed my shoulder. I nearly screamed. It was Walt. His weathered face looked pale beneath the moonlight. What did I tell you? How did you? No time. He shoved something into my hand. An old brass compass. The needle spun wildly. If it points north, he swallowed. He swallowed. We're dead. What? Walk. What was that thing? Walk. We left the clearing without another word. After several minutes, I realized something strange. The compass needle had stopped spinning. It wasn't pointing north or south. It pointed directly behind us, as if something was following. Walt noticed. He quietly said, "Don't look." I looked anyway. The path behind us was empty. No creature. No movement. Just darkness. I don't see anything. Good. We kept walking. 5 minutes later, the compass pointed closer. 10 minutes after that, it pointed almost straight down, directly beneath my hand. Walt's breathing became uneven. It's underneath us. I laughed nervously. That's impossible. He stopped walking. So is this forest. Before I could answer, the ground beneath my boots thumped. Not shook. Thumped. Like something enormous had struck the earth from below. Once. Then again. The soil rose nearly an inch. Cooper whimpered. Another thump. Closer. The dirt between the tree roots began to crack. Not split. Open. Thin black lines spread across the forest floor in every direction like veins beneath skin. A smell drifted upward. Wet soil. Rotting leaves. And something metallic. Blood. Walt grabbed my arm hard enough to hurt. Listen to me. His voice was shaking now. You still don't understand where we are. We're in the woods. No? He looked me dead in the eyes. We're underneath them. I frowned. What? He pointed upward. Very slowly. I tilted my flashlight toward the sky. The beam reached the canopy, past the branches, past the leaves. And then it illuminated another forest, upside down. Roots hanging like branches. Trees growing downward toward us. A second woodland suspended above the first, stretching endlessly into darkness. My knees nearly gave out. The thing beneath the ground struck again. This time, something answered from the upside-down forest above. Branches snapped. Hundreds of them. Whatever was below us, something equally massive had begun moving overhead. Walt's face turned white. They've heard each other. I could barely breathe. What does that mean? He looked toward the direction of my house. It means, for the first time since I'd known him, I heard genuine fear in his voice. What? The forest finally knows where you live. Neither of us spoke. Walt didn't have to explain why that sentence terrified him. If the forest knew where I lived, then it knew where everyone I cared about lived too. Move, he said. This time I didn't argue. We hurried through the trees while Cooper stayed so close he kept bumping into my legs. The compass needle continued pointing behind us. Not because something was chasing us anymore, because something was matching our pace. No footsteps, no broken branches, just the impossible certainty that every time we moved, it moved. Exactly the same distance, exactly the same speed. After nearly 20 minutes, the darkness ahead began to thin. I could finally see my backyard fence. Relief washed over me. We were almost out. Then Walt grabbed my jacket. Stop. What? Count. I frowned. What? The fence posts. I almost laughed. Instead I looked. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There should have been 12. There were 13. A brand new fence post stood in the middle of the others. Its wood was darker, newer. It hadn't been there that morning. I looked at Walt. He wasn't surprised. He looked defeated. It already started. What started? The forest is measuring your property. My mouth went dry. What does that even mean? It never grows all at once. He pointed toward the extra post. It expands by replacing things. Before I could ask another question, the new fence post bent, not because of wind. It folded in half like it had joints. The bark split. 2 impossibly long arms unfolded. Then 2 legs. What I'd thought was wood slowly stood upright. It was roughly the height of a man. Its entire body resembled carved cedar. No face, no mouth, only a smooth oval where a head should have been. The sound it made wasn't a growl. It sounded like an old house settling. Long, slow, wood rubbing against wood. Cooper barked furiously. The thing turned toward him, its featureless head tilted. Then, from somewhere inside its hollow body, it copied his bark perfectly. Not close. Perfectly. Cooper stopped barking immediately. He tucked his tail and backed away. It mimics, Walt whispered. Don't answer it. The creature copied him too. Don't answer it. Same voice, same breathing, same trembling fear. Then, it spoke again. This time, in my father's voice. Evan. Every muscle in my body locked. Dad? Walt slammed his hand over my mouth. Don't. The creature waited. When I didn't answer, it took one slow step backward. Its legs sank into the ground like roots. Its arms stretched upward. Branches exploded from its shoulders. Within seconds, it was a tree again, exactly where the extra fence post had been. Except now, there were 14 posts, not 13. I blinked. Did it? Walt nodded. It planted another. A cold realization settled over me. It wasn't invading. It was reproducing. Inside my yard. We climbed over the fence and rushed into the house. The moment the back door shut, everything became quiet. Almost normal. I locked every door, closed every curtain, checked every window. Nothing. No movement outside. No creatures. No whispers. Maybe it couldn't cross the property line. Maybe a knock echoed through the front door. 3 slow knocks. Cooper growled. Walt looked through the peephole. His shoulders stiffened. Who's there? No answer. He opened the inside cover just enough to look again. Then he whispered, It's me. I stared at him. What? He stepped away from the door. My truck. He swallowed. Is parked in the driveway. So? I can see myself standing next to it. Every hair on my arm stood up. The knocking came again. 3 knocks. Then a familiar voice. Evan. It was Walt. Exactly. I'm locked out. The real Walt never looked away from the peephole. Slowly, he leaned aside so I could see. Standing on my porch was Walt. Same clothes, same beard, same coffee-stained ranger jacket. He smiled. The smile was wrong. Too wide, too patient. Like someone who had learned what smiling looked like from photographs instead of people. The fake Walt raised one hand and waved. Behind him, another figure stepped out of the darkness. Me. Same jeans. Same jacket. Even the scrape on my left elbow from repairing the fence. My duplicate smiled too. Then, they both looked directly at the window above the sink. The one with the curtains still slightly open. I hadn't noticed the gap. Neither of them had been facing that direction until they did. As one. Without moving their feet. Their heads simply rotated. Too far. Farther than a human neck should allow. The fake version of me pointed at the curtain. It had seen us. The lights flickered. Once. Twice. Then every reflective surface inside the house changed. The microwave door. The television screen. The picture frames. Every reflection showed us standing perfectly still. Except, we weren't. Our reflections were smiling. Neither Walt nor I was. I looked away instantly. "Don't look into glass," Walt said. "You knew this would happen?" "No." His breathing grew faster. I hoped it wouldn't. The knocking stopped. Silence. Then, a car pulled into my driveway. Headlights washed across the living room. It was my younger sister, Rachel. She climbed out carrying a grocery bag. My heart nearly stopped. She wasn't supposed to come over tonight. She smiled and started toward the porch. "No." I rushed for the door. Walt grabbed me. "If you open it, that's my sister. It's counting on that." I shoved him away. Before I reached the lock, Rachel froze. She wasn't looking at the house. She was looking at the yard behind it. I followed her gaze through the kitchen window. Every tree behind my fence had turned. Trees don't turn, but every trunk now faced the house. Thousands of them, perfectly aligned, watching. Rachel slowly backed toward her car. Something reached out from behind the nearest tree. Not quickly, almost gently. A pale wooden hand rested on her shoulder. She spun around. No one was there. The hand was gone. Rachel frowned in confusion. Then she looked toward my front porch, toward the fake version of me. It smiled and opened its arms as if greeting family. Rachel smiled back. She thought it was me. She started walking toward it. I unlocked the door. Walt shouted. The moment the door opened, every tree in the forest bent forward at exactly the same angle, like an audience leaning in to watch the end of a play. Rachel stepped onto the porch. The fake me wrapped its arms around her. For one brief second, everything looked normal. Then she looked over its shoulder, straight at me. Standing in the doorway, her smile disappeared. She looked from me, sides, to the thing holding her, then back again. Confusion turned into terror. She opened her mouth to scream. The creature holding her whispered something into her ear. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw the effect. She stopped struggling, stopped blinking, stopped breathing. Then, without another sound, she turned, walked off the porch, and calmly disappeared into the forest, as though she'd suddenly remembered she had always lived there. The fake version of me watched her go. Then it looked back at me, still smiling, and, for the first time, it winked.